once again, comic fans and collectors. Thanks for tuning in to Iconic Keys. Today I want to delve into some key issues for everyone's favorite heroes in a half shell, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Primarily, we'll be looking at TMNT issues 1 and 2, and afterwards, the Raphael one-shot. Issue 1, which debuted on May 5th of 1984, is the first appearance of the anthropomorphic heroes along with their sensei, Master Splinter. We also get to see their arch-nemesis, Shredder, in the first issue. Shredder is the leader of the dreaded Foot Clan, ninja assassins who have plagued our heroes in nearly every incarnation of the Turtles saga. Issue 2 of the comic included the debut of the Turtles' first human ally, April O'Neil. April's first incarnation was as a computer programmer and assistant to Baxter Stockman, although we would later go on to see her portrayed with a variety of other personas in subsequent Turtle media. Sometimes she was a spunky TV news reporter, as seen in the animated television series, or as a science student working at the Baxter Building in the published books from IDW. Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird first debuted their creation at the Portsmouth, New Hampshire Comic Show. The first issue was a self-published title financed with a tax refund and a small loan from Eastman's uncle. The artist stated that their first outing was just a single issue, only planned to be a one-shot and intended to parody 4 of the biggest comics in the early 80s. Those comics were Daredevil, the Man Without Fear, also the New Mutants. Dave Sims' self-published title, Cerebus the Aardvark, was included, and Frank Miller's Ronin. What truly propelled the Turtles to international notoriety was an early licensing deal inked with the two creators to create merchandise. By 1987, just 3 short years after that fateful comic show, the Turtles had an animated cartoon on a major TV network and action figures on the shelves of department stores across the country. The rest, as they say, is history. The young mutant heroes that we first meet in issue 1 are Leonardo. Leonardo is the tactical, level-headed leader of the group. He is likely the most devoted student of the Turtles' sensei. Leonardo wears a blue mask and dual-wields katanas. Leonardo was named after the Italian polymath, painter, engineer, inventor, writer, anatomist, and sculptor. Michelangelo is a free-spirited, relaxed prankster and well known for his love of pizza. Michelangelo wears an orange mask and wields a pair of nunchucks. He is the comic relief and seemingly most youthful of the 4. He is named after the Italian Renaissance painter, sculptor, architect, poet, and engineer. Donatello is the scientist of the group. He's also an engineer and a tech genius. He wears a purple mask and wields a bow staff. He is perhaps the least combative of the Turtles, finding his solace in more cerebral pursuits. But he never hesitates to defend his brothers should the need arise. He is named after the early Renaissance Italian artist and sculptor from Florence. Raphael is the team's resident bad boy and hothead. He wears a red mask and wields a pair of sai. He has the most aggressive nature of the group and seldom hesitates to throw the first punch. He is intensely loyal to his brothers and his sensei. He is named after the Italian painter and architect of the High Renaissance. Splinter, the Turtles' sensei and adoptive father, was originally in the comics a mutated Japanese rat that learned the ways of ninjutsu from his owner and master, Hamato Yoshi. His name and characteristics are a parody of the Marvel Comics character Stick, who trained Matt Murdock, better known as Daredevil. Our book opens with the Turtles battling a group of gun-toting thugs and mopping the floor with them. Soon the local authorities arrive and the Turtles head down into the sewers where they make their home. Once the Turtles arrive at their refuge in the subterranean tunnels, they find their master Splinter and inform him of their recent victory. Splinter then decrees that they are now ready to learn of their mission, as their ninja skills are now at their peak. This is a mission that Splinter has been training the Turtles for over 13 years, a mission of retribution. The sensei then takes this opportunity to inform the Turtles, and us the reader for the first time, of theirs and his origins. Splinter was once the pet rat of Hamato Yoshi. Hamato Yoshi was said to be the greatest shadow warrior of his clan, a clan known as the Foot. While Splinter resides in his cage, he would intently observe Yoshi as he practiced his martial arts. Splinter would then pedantically mimic his movements and eventually became just as adept as his human benefactor. Splinter explains that Yoshi was involved in a bitter rivalry with one of his fellow clan members, Oroku Nagi. In all things, the two were fiercely competitive with one another, even in affairs of the heart. They both grew to love the same beautiful woman. The woman who had enraptured the two men was named Tang Shin, but she reciprocated the love of only one of the men, Splinter's master, Yoshi. Yoshi's rival Nagi grew to be extremely jealous, and one night, in a fit of rage, he went to Tang Shin's home and demanded that she declare her love for him alone. She refused this demand, and Nagi began to beat her. At that moment, Yoshi came upon them, and in uncontrollable anger slew his rival Nagi. This was a shameful act in the eyes of the Foot Clan, as the slaying of a fellow member is strictly forbidden. Yoshi now had two choices. He could take his own life in ritual suicide and hope to discover honor in the next life, or he could flee from the clan and attempt to start a new life elsewhere. Yoshi decided on the latter, and fled to New York City with Tang Shin, his rat Splinter, and a handful of possessions. Once in New York, he opened his own martial arts dojo, and all went well for several years. Unbeknownst to Yoshi, back in Japan, Nagi's brother Saki had sworn revenge against Yoshi for what he saw as the murder of his beloved brother. His anger pushed him to train harder and become the premier ninja in the Foot Clan. As a reward for his diligent dedication to training, the clan sent him to New York City to lead the Big Apple's branch of the Foot Ninjas. Saki recognized this as his opportunity to execute his revenge on Hamato Yoshi. Saki rapidly set to work building the New York branch of the Foot into a criminal powerhouse involved in a multitude of illicit activities. Illegal activities that included drug smuggling, arms dealing, and their specialty, the ancient trade of assassination. While busy with criminal expansion, he never forgot his personal goal. After a time, he was able to track Yoshi and Tang down and then set his plans for vengeance into motion. While Yoshi was away at work, Saki broke into his apartment and murdered Tang Shin. Saki then lay in wait until Yoshi returned home. As Hamato walked through the door, he saw his dead wife and her murderer, Oroku Saki. Saki then announced himself as the Shredder. A great fight ensued between the two, in which Splinter's cage was broken, freeing the rat. Eventually, the younger, sharper Shredder was able to best his older opponent, as Yoshi's skills had dulled over the years. Yoshi was ultimately slain, as Shredder's appetite for vengeance was finally sated. Anguished over the death of his master, Splinter fled to the alleys where he subsisted on scraps of garbage. That is, until the day when a truck drove by, and a strange canister was displaced and flew out of its cargo hold. The container struck a young man in the head, bounced off of the pavement, and smashed into a young boy's aquarium, an aquarium which was filled with tiny turtles. The shattered glass bowl, canister, and turtles all fell into an open manhole cover, into the dark sewers below. The metal container held some strange chemical. The canister broke open upon impacting the floor within the sewer and bathed the turtles in its glowing ooze. Splinter, curious about the fate of the turtles, followed below to see what had happened to them. Splinter found the turtles, collecting them into a coffee can and cleaning the goo off of them as best he could. The next day, the wise rat discovered that he and the turtles were mutating, growing more human-like with every passing day. Eventually the turtles spoke, and Splinter began to set his own plan for vengeance into motion. He started training the four turtles in the art of ninjutsu that he had learned from years of watching Hamato Yoshi. He then named each turtle after a famous Renaissance artist. These names he had found in an old forsaken book he had discovered in the sewer. After hearing the tales of their origins, the turtles resolved to avenge the death of Splinter's master Yoshi. They decided to defeat the Shredder in mortal combat. Raphael goes on a guerrilla mission to deliver a message to Saki at Splinter's direction. He goes about his mission in typical Raphael fashion, tearing through multiple foes to find his target. The message, delivered on one of Raphael's thrown side, demands that Saki meet the turtles on the rooftops to duel to the death in the name of honor. The Shredder brings many ninjas of the Foot Clan with him, and a great battle between the turtles and the ninjas ensues. The battle is fierce, but the turtles win hands down, forcing Shredder himself into combat. This fight is much closer than the initial part of the fray. The turtles, though, are ultimately able to triumph through their use of teamwork. Once the Turtles have defeated Shredder, they demand that he commit seppuku to regain the honor he had lost when he murdered Yoshi. Shredder refuses this option and displays a thermite grenade that he had concealed. The Shredder vows that if he is to die, he will take the Turtles with him. Donatello saves the day by throwing his bow staff into Saki's jaw, which knocks him and the grenade off the rooftop. As Shredder falls, the Turtles rush to the edge of the building and observe the grenade go off in a blinding flash. The Turtles have succeeded in the task that Master Splinter had set before them. With their mission now complete, the Turtles fade into the night. After the initial success and enthusiastic reception of the first issue, Eastman and Laird set about on a second issue. The second Turtles story opens with the Turtles and Splinter watching the news. The reporter, Miss Hines, is doing a story about Dr. Baxter Stockman and his new invention, the rodent-killing robotic mouser. Stockman, with the help of his lovely assistant April O'Neil, demonstrates the mouser's ability to track and slay rats. Splinter cautions the Turtles that they must be very careful with this new threat in town. Several weeks pass, and in that time, many bank robberies have occurred in the city. April is one day reading the paper to Dr. Stockman. The article that she shares with him describes the strange small tunnels dug into all of the bank's vaults which were robbed. April hypothesizes that the mousers could be capable of digging such a tunnel. The good doctor promptly dismisses such a ludicrous idea, pointing out that April and he are the only ones that have control of the robots. Stockman then proceeds to take Miss O'Neil to an underground security level of the laboratory, where he shows her a massive army of mousers that are being built. April demands to know how he obtained the funding to build hundreds of mousers. She concludes that her suspicions were correct. The mousers were robbing the banks. Stockman then reveals his plan to blackmail the city. April is confused as she notes that Stockman could have made millions legally with his invention. Dr. Stockman replies that he's not doing it for the money, but for the lulz. April realizes that the doc is quite mad, and she bolts for the elevator. Stockman has rigged the lift to dump April into the sewers, though, and sends several mousers in pursuit to kill her. Just as she's about to be mauled by the mousers, the Turtles arrive and save her by quickly dispatching the robots. April faints at the sight of the heroes, though, so they took her back to their lair. When April awakens, she is eventually convinced of the Turtles' noble intentions, and then treated to the tale of the Turtles' origin story. The Turtles then turn on the news, only to find Stockman making his insane demands of the city. It seems that he's had the mousers digging tunnels underneath every corporate headquarters building in New York City. He states that if a ransom is not paid for each location, then he will have the mousers destroy the skyscraper's foundations, razing them to the ground. The Turtles and April decide that it's up to them to stop the mad doctor. The Turtles gear up, and April guides them secretly into his building. They then confront Baxter, who engages a self-destruct program, trapping them in the basement lab. The Turtles manage to blast a hole in the wall, but unfortunately it leads to the storage room full of mousers. The horde of bloodthirsty robots then attack the Turtles. Leo, Raph, and Mike struggle to hold them off, but there are far too many. Just as it looks like it's certain death for our heroes, Don and April manage to program the computer to shut down all the power in the cellar, including the mousers. We didn't have to wait long after the Turtles' debut until we saw the first appearance of fan favorite Casey Jones. The hockey mask-clad vigilante first debuted in Raphael's one-shot, which was published in January of 1985. The Raphael one-shot opens with Raphael and Michelangelo sparring. Michelangelo gains the upper hand and wins the sparring match, to which Raphael loses his cool and goes after his good-natured brother with a wrench. Leonardo breaks up the skirmish and sends Raph outside to cool off. As he's patrolling the rooftops, Raphael wonders if he's possibly crazy and ponders his inability to control his temper. Meanwhile, elsewhere, for the first time we see Casey Jones lifting weights and watching television. The mighty Casey decides that the police need help cleaning up the city, so he dons his hockey mask, grabs his golf bag full of sports equipment, and heads out to defend New York from the vile scum that sneaks about the city. Casey quickly runs into some muggers and proceeds to stomp them. Raph sees the fight and feels that Casey is going a little overboard with his punishment. He intercedes in an effort to stop the pounding before the crooks are totally murdered. Jones does not take kindly to Raph's interference, and naturally a fight breaks out between the two. Raph knocks Casey to the ground, and Casey surrenders, only to sneak attack Raph with a golf club and make a hasty escape. Raph is dazed and decides that this crazed vigilante must be stopped before he kills someone. Raph heads out in pursuit of Casey moments later. Casey spots two thieves stealing a car radio and quickly incapacitates them. As Casey prepares to beat the crooks into the pavement, Raph catches up with him. The two once again clash in battle. Raph knocks Casey down again, telling him that not all crimes are deserving of capital punishment. This has no effect on Jones, and he lashes out at Raph as he flees into the streets. Raphael has a moment of reservation. Should he risk being seen by people or remain hidden and allow Casey to escape? Raphael decides to pursue Jones and is quickly spotted by some alarmed and very confused drivers. Casey hides in a park and ambushes Raphael when he arrives. The battle is fierce, and Raph once again gets the better of Jones, who finally surrenders for real this time. The two have a quick discussion, Raph telling Casey that killing people for stealing tape decks is crazy. "Yeah, right, I'm crazy," Jones says, "but something tells me you ain't above taking somebody out if they tick you off." "I have a temper, true," Raph replies, "but at least I try to control it. You don't." As the two continue to bicker, their attention is drawn by nearby cries for help. The two decide to form at least a temporary alliance and deal with this new emergency together. There you have it. In those three key issues, you have the first appearances of most of your major characters in the saga of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The Turtles exploded onto the scene in the 80s. It's rare for a property like this to experience such a rapid growth in popularity that displays the staying power that the Turtles have had. It's been almost 40 years, and the Turtles are just as alive today as ever. Eastman and Laird, on their shoestring budget, and really just out to have a little creative whimsy, were only able, or willing, to print an estimated 3,000 copies of that first issue in early 1984. Its first printing is one of the most coveted comics to appear in the 1980s. The CGC census does show 32 slabbed and graded 9.8s, a significant number for a book with such a low print run. A recent sale of a 9.8 was reported to be in excess of $60,000. A word of warning, though, if you think you found one of these grails in the wild. The book was heavily counterfeited. Those counterfeits can be authenticated rather easily, however, if you need to, due to some obvious mistakes that were made on the reproductions. That's not always the case with some other books that saw significant counterfeiting, where the fakes were nearly spot on. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have been with us now for 2 generations, and for many, Turtle Mania is just as alive today as it was in the 80s. Until next time, thanks for watching, and take care.